it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. Guess who's back? Today is our first returning guest. She is a high performance coach. She is a strength and conditioning coach, Olympic hopeful. I believe last time she was self-described as a goal digger. It's Coach T, or Tilita. So excited that she is back to chat with us. Really enjoyed our first conversation, really wanted to get more focused with her this time and talk about specifics of adding strength training into a routine, mostly specifically for runners. So we talk about strength training, what that looks like, different kinds of strength training, how to add that into your routine, kind of what a program can look like. Also cross training. So really valuable information. Definitely gave me a lot of good insight with my own program writing. So super valuable, I think, for all of us who either are coaches or people who have a fitness plan. All right. Well, to start, you're actually the first returning guest ever. So yeah, can you remind people who already heard your episode, remind people who you are, or introduce yourself for people who don't know who you are?
Definitely. And that's so exciting to be a returning guest. I love that. But when we have good conversations, I love to have more conversations with people who are engaging as you are. And so yeah, we could go on. Anyway, I am Tilita Lutterloh, aka Coach T. And I am a high performance coach. I help purpose-driven high achievers get stronger and eat better so they can do more of what they want and do it better, essentially. So I work with a variety of clients, but a large percentage of them have been runners, and different levels of running as well, from the curious newbie all the way to 20 marathon under their belt veterans, So I do all of that as far as high performance coach through strength training, nutrition coaching, and goal digging mindset work.
I love that still. Also, so I found out my mom loved the episode that you were on. She said you were super engaging and fun, and I forget what else. But she also told me my dad apparently was a triple jumper. So that is things I never paid attention to. She's like, your dad did triple jump. I'm like, no, obviously I didn't know that, because I was like, what's triple jump?
Oh, that's so funny. So, that's cool.
Yeah. Learned something new, and then I never remembered to ask him about triple jump. So now this is my reminder again, should ask him about that, because I clearly never paid attention, because I'm sure he talked about it.
Right. And it's very, I at least for me, very rare to meet other triple jumpers. So that's cool that he.
And I feel like that's what we talked about too, was like, I'm like, I've always been in track and field in that whole space, but it's like, you don't really ever talk to the triple jumpers or know that many, or like there's one person on your team that does it, right? Like, it's just not something everybody does, where it's like, oh yeah, everyone gets thrown in the 400,
Yes.
So
exactly.
I just thought that was funny. And I was like, I'm glad I still remembered that, because it was like the week after the episode came out. She's like, I'm like, no, wow. Okay. Connections there, huh?
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Well, so what have you been up to? Anything fun, like running related, fitness related, other things related?
Oh my goodness.
Or anything in general.
Right. Let's see. Since the last time we spoke, I actually just got back last week, from 6 weeks. I won't, it's not a vacation, I won't say that. But so I live in Los Angeles, but I'm originally from North Carolina by way of New York, so I've lived in New York, but my hometown, where I went to high school, and most of my family are still in North Carolina. And so I was in North Carolina for 6 weeks visiting my mom, great quality time and reconnecting with hometown friends, it was great. And I didn't realize just how much I needed that, even though I was still working, since I would work with clients online as well. It just a different energy that I needed for a while. And I had only planned on being there for 3 weeks. I was in a friend's wedding there. And then I was like, I'll stay a little longer. So that was great. That's the most recent new thing that has happened. And let's see. And no, yeah, just going strong with heading into the end of the year, closing out some people's strength programs who have been in my program for a year. So they have one more month and in a whole year, and seeing their progress, yes, in physical strength, but in how, and this is just one of the things that what's the word? That is the crux of my work, is seeing how strength training has that crossover effect. I call it the crossover effect into your daily life. So yes, strength training is going to obviously make your body stronger. Yes, I definitely work with many runners who lack strength training in their training program. So that helps them be better runners. But I also love seeing how it just shifts a person in their courage and confidence in daily life outside of fitness and running. And so that's been cool to see. So this month, no, what is this? The last day of October. Next month, we'll have like a closing session, or an exit session, if you will, to talk about all their progress and celebrate those things. So I'm looking forward to that.
Wow. Okay. That is so cool. And actually, I was thinking I needed to ask you about strength training and how that relates to, daily lives and all those things. Because before you even said that, I was like, I feel like because you do all that mindset stuff and like, the high performance, everything, but like strength training is a different, and I feel like I'm already fast forwarding because I wanted to do an intro to strength training, but forget it. We'll get there eventually. But that's like a different kind of hurt that you have to go through to like do that, like, and maybe I was never doing it right, and that's why it always hurt. But like, I feel like putting weights on your body, actually moving underweight, moving muscles that you never moved before, I feel like is a different kind of thing than even just like the people who go for a run and stuff. So
yes.
Is that kind of like also how it can translate, or like what really, I guess, is that you see that affects people?
Yes. Oh my gosh, great question. And I like the way you put that, putting your weight on your body, or moving with weight, moving extra weight. So when you think about what the definition of strength is, the capacity to withstand great force or pressure. And I attribute that to both physical and mental. The capacity to withstand great force or pressure. So when you physically train that and feel how you are able to go through a threshold, or push your edge of discomfort that you had when something so heavy that you couldn't lift before, and then you're getting to a point, wait, I can now. And then you get to a point where, I can do it easily now. So therefore I can do more weight now, that translates up here into your life and your ability, or your tapping into more confidence that you are going to be able to withstand great forces and pressures of life. So I think it's a great metaphor, or I don't know if you want to say metaphor, it's a literal translation. When people train with me, that's what we're training for. You are training, yes, for maybe a physical goal that you might have, but you're training for life, essentially. You really are. And I know many people say running is a great metaphor for life. How people say life is a marathon, not a sprint. And there are because there are different phases through life, and you have to adjust and, maneuver according to what's coming your way now in this phase of the run, or this phase in your life. You have to adjust, tap into different areas of strength, tap into different areas of endurance, tap into different areas of mobility and stability. And all of that is what we train physically when we do strength training.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I always love when things relate back to running and like,
Yeah.
you know, even those cliche things like, right, life's a
Yes.
marathon, not a sprint, but it's like, but it's so applicable. Like running really is the metaphor for life. So
Yeah.
always
Yes.
love that. Okay, so now I will get back on track. So strength training, what, well, you kind of said what strength is, but so you work with lots of different kinds of people who probably have different goals, but is there
Mhm.
like a formula that you follow? Is there a like where everybody kind of starts in the same way, or is it kind of like this is your goal, this is your body, this is where we start?
Mm. That's a yes, great question. And yes, everyone does have different goals, and I like to, well, depending on your experience with, training, um any kind of training, and then of course your specific experience with strength training, I still like to start at a base foundation, like rebuild your foundation is what I always call my phase one, rebuild your foundation. And how long that lasts can be different for different people, but I always like to get back to basics first so I can see as your coach, and so you can feel where your body is most proficient at, what kinds of movements, is your body, do you own your movements, are you compensating somewhere, and if there's instability or imbalances from one side to another side, kind of thing. And so when we get back to basics, we're rebuilding the foundation, or re you're training the integrity of the tissues of the body, of your joints, of your base flexion, extension movements, basic range of motion kind of things. And so that might last for 4 weeks with someone whose body is adapting pretty quickly because they have a lot of experience, or it might last for 8 to 10 weeks for someone who's less conditioned and a more deconditioned person. But after that rebuild your foundation phase, and there's an assessment first so that we can see, okay, by the end of this phase, what we want to see improve. If these things are improved, then yes, we can move on, to the next phase. And the next phases is where it gets more specific to that person's goal. So it becomes more customized, essentially. And that can go through phases of strength conditioning, of stability, mobility, then agility and intermediate strength, then maybe advanced strength and power. But let's say I was working with a runner who wants to train for a specific race, then that becomes even more, the customization that is, becomes even more important to follow a progression, because as they start amping up their mileage, depending on what kind of race, obviously, then you don't also want to amp up volume volume or intensity of your strength training. I like to do them. Wait, this way. Wait, is that right? As one inclines,
It
one
looks good. Yeah. Yeah, now I don't know either, but I can see it in my head. So
yes. As one thing is ramping up, the other is either staying steady or ramping down, so that you're not overloading the body. So that gets into very obviously specific strategies of programming and coaching, which is why if you think of Olympians, they're on a 4-year plan. Whereas if you're training for a very specific race, let's say the next New York City Marathon, that might be a 4-month plan, as opposed to over a 4-year period. The goal is to have that Olympian peak at that time, not peak this year if the Olympics is not until 3 years from now. So all of that to say, that's where strategy and comes in. That's where obviously recovery is important to save the body forever, how long it is you'll be training. All of that comes into play. And yeah, I like to follow like a ramp up structure, and then a deload recovery phase. Ramp up, recovery, ramp up, recovery. So no one's program, no matter what your goal is, no one's program is ever just keep going, progress. Otherwise, yes, you will not be saving your body. It will not be sustainable. And nothing will feel good at all.
well, that's what I was going to ask when you mentioned the, like Olympians plans are way different than if, you're 4 months from now, you have your race. Cause like
I know that you can't just keep building and building and building and building. Like there does need to be that pattern of like,
Yes.
you do have to take a little break, you do have to back off a little bit.
Yes.
So I'm glad you pointed that out. Can you, well, I guess first, what does, and there's probably a couple different things, but like what does the strength training look like? Because in my head also, when I first hear strength training, I might picture like, like leg day, where it's like, okay, this day I'm doing legs and back, and then the next day you're doing biceps and something else. Or sometimes I picture like functional fitness, CrossFit kind of things. But then also if I think a little more, then I'm like, okay, we could be talking Pilates or, so like,
Right.
can you tell us a little bit about like what it is, or all the different things I guess it could be?
Yes. Wait, this is sliding. Hold on, my computer. Okay.
I was gonna say you're moving all over now.
Right. Yes, that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is what I see a lot of people getting. That's not the right word. It's like I call the online buffet of exercise, of training, because there is so much, and it doesn't have to be just online. I said online just because I know I get a lot of people who will ask about, oh, I saw such and such on Instagram, or I saw this video on YouTube, or I said, that's why I said online. But it's a hodgepodge basically of throwing together different things, because people either hear, oh, well, that's good for your core, well, that's good for endurance, but that's good for mobility, but that's good for and that's where knowing your body, knowing what your goals are, and knowing what is your specific limiting factor, what's like your strengths, and where do you know your body needs to progress the most. Those questions will help you figure out things to put together, because I wholeheartly believe in integrating your training, integrative training. So one client's structure might look like, or one client's program might look like 2 days a week of strength training, 4 days a week of running, 2 days a week of yoga, 1 day of Pilates. Or someone else might be 5 days of yoga, 3 days of strength training, 3 days of running, and one, I don't know, high intensity interval boot camp day, but it's specific to what it is their body needs, and how to best recover, putting all those things together, how to recover from those things. So for me, not me, my training, but when I work with a client, and specifically a runner, typically, especially because lots of, at least many who I've met are who haven't strength trained, are afraid to, because they think it's going to add bulk, therefore make them heavy when they run, or they're scared to hurt themselves. They know, oh, I know it's important, but I don't actually know what to do, so I don't do it because I might hurt myself. Or they know it's important, then they overdo it. So for those who haven't really implemented it into their plan, I typically start with 2 days a week, to get their body adapted, but it's not too much, because I know they're already running a lot, probably. So we don't need to add too much onto it, but we do need to introduce the body to something and let it know, okay, this is going to be something that important to the body. So we got to introduce it to it. So 2 days a week. And because it's only 2 days a week, they're both full body. They're different movements, but still full body. I don't think if you're looking for performance, any performance-based goal, so any sport specific goal, soccer, swimming, running, horseback ride, any, performance, typically separating the body into arm day, leg day, or biceps, triceps, like compartmentalizing or isolating the body, isn't the best for those kinds of goals, for performance goals, because a performance goal needs the body to work together, and isolating your muscles is not your body working together. The body is always working together. Let me say that, like, there's really no such thing. You can never really isolate one muscle. Other things are working, but in general, you get what I mean by that kind of isolation. So I'll slow down and see if that makes sense so far.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And I'm glad you pointed out that like even the isolating is like, yeah, no, I totally get that.
Especially if you are, again, training for a race. If you are in that 3-month or 4-month phase of training for a race, definitely then. Now, maybe another time of the year where a race, specifically a race, isn't your focus, you still run to maintain, but the race itself isn't your focus, then sure, you could do some isolated body part type of workouts. If you know you want specific, if you're looking for some specific aesthetic, or I want my triceps a little more, lean or more cut, then yes, you're going to probably focus on them a little more. But in race mode, where the race is the primary goal, then that wouldn't be the way to strength train. So yeah, that I'll say there's always a time and a place for the different types of training.
Okay, awesome. And so you said for your newer people coming in, or they're new to strength training, you usually do like 2 times a week. I imagine they are separated by a couple of days would be my guess.
Yes.
But why do I have a sad baby? Oh no.
Oh
no. Oh no. We'll see if he stops. And I will cut that out if I remember. So yeah, the 2 days a week. I know for me, and maybe this, I'm assuming this is normal, but it could not be. If I go from not doing any strength training or doing like very little to I go back to CrossFit, or I go, start doing some kind of plan, I am sore for a while. Even if in my head, I don't think I, did too much, or I'm not a big weight person. So I'm not usually like, oh, I need to throw on all the weights. Right. But it's just like those different movements, all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I'm sore. So then of course that like is a little discouraging, because it's like, now it's affecting my running for those couple days because my muscles hurt. And eventually I've learned now that, you do it enough and it all, your body gets used to it, and that doesn't happen all the time anymore.
Right.
I guess, like, first of all, is that to be expected when you're first starting a plan? And then like, is there anything newer lifters or new to strength training people can do so that like maybe you don't have to compromise your runs as much or something, just so it's not as like daunting to be like, okay, you have to start strength training. You are going to feel sore. You are going to feel a little slower for the next 2 weeks or whatever it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. Great question. And yes, there are ways to minimize that, either minimize how sore you are and or minimize how long the soreness lasts. So things like your water intake, your electrolyte intake, your both protein and carbohydrates will help. So that's consumption wise, food wise, those things. Then foam rolling or trigger point therapy, all of those soft tissue work. And my fave, but not a lot of clients' faves, ice baths or cold plunge, 100% like effective. Not that you won't be sore, but how sore you are and how long it lasts, a cold plunge absolutely will help. And essentially what that is, when you are sore or when you work out, regardless of what kind of workout, but when you work out and especially adding weight and strength training, you are literally breaking down the muscle fibers. They're micro tears of your muscle fibers. So during your rest, that is where your muscles build back up. But that breaking down of the muscle fibers is what you want to repair. They're repairing themselves during your recovery time. And so during that recovery time, you want to do all that you can do to help that repair. And that's where those strategies come in, that I mentioned, as far as food, water intake and all that. And then also your soft tissue work and the cold plunge will help the repair process.
Now okay, so I'm like picturing, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I forgot the second part to your question, as far as you can feel the difference in your run. if you focus on those kinds of the slower recovery runs during that time, or not even during the whole time, but especially the day after, a recovery run, like a low mileage, slower recovery run would be good, because the worst thing you can do is not move. You'll just make things stiffen up and more sore. So yes, actually go out and do a no pressure recovery run, and that with all the other things that I mentioned, and that will definitely help as well.
And that actually leads me into the next question, kind of, is so you're picturing your running plan, you got your 2 or 3 days of lifting, you got your possibly 4 days of running. Are we able to fit in, and is there benefit, I imagine so, to like biking days, rowing days, swimming days? Because also now, like I've said, but 3 days and 4 days, and we're running out of days to be doing other stuff. And I know that like all plans are different. But like I know currently I'm following a running plan, and I have lifting days and I have running days, and I don't have a biking day, which I used to love to do, and that kind of stuff. So are we supposed to be fitting those things in? What does that do for us? How is that helpful? Or I guess, who do we put that in for?
Right. Yes, it's helpful. And essentially the purpose of cross-training days is to minimize the body's repetitive stress, because running is one of many, I mean, even a cyclist, if they're biking all the time, that itself is repetitive. So whatever your main movement is, that's this repetitive thing. So doing something different, whether it's a varied modality, a varied movement patterns, varied intensity, or varied impact, those would be the criteria that would vary it up, that you would change for it to be considered cross-training, is to help minimize the repetitive stress. And again, contribute to your recovery. So let's say for a runner, that movement pattern of just forward motion, something that's different than that. So a varied movement pattern that could be in your cross training might be agility work, let's say. But again, your cross training is also not meant to be intense. So that's one key thing to keep in mind. Because the purpose is to minimize repetitive stress, it's not to increase intensity or anything like that. But it's just to get the body out of that repetitive mode, to contribute to recovery, to get the body in a different movement pattern, and utilizing those muscles slightly differently. So it could be light agility work. It could be anything that's not forward motion. So thinking of what's that? There's a machine, I forget what it's called, but it kind of mimics if you're ice skating, or if you're, because it
like the elliptical.
It's like an elliptical, but not forward. It's kind of side. Right? yeah. Oh. So that could be one. But again, that's specific to changing the movement pattern. If you want to do something as a runner, cross training to minimize impact, that would be, yes, cycling. That could be, yes, elliptical. What else? I actually wrote, that could be the rower. Because you're definitely using your upper body a little more in rowing, which is cool too. But you're off your feet essentially, so there's no impact to the ground. So let's see, we covered changing your movement pattern, changing impact, again, changing intensity. So we just mentioned a recovery run. That might be a light, what they usually say, 1 to 2 minutes per mile slower than your typical mile pace as a recovery run, like a pace where you can have a conversation with someone. So that also helps recover your body and the energy system that you're using when you're running. So yeah, I think that was it. Movement pattern, impact, and intensity. And if you're doing it, it could, because it's not meant to increase your intensity, it's also not meant to increase in volume of work. So you only need to do it one to 2 times a week. If that, it might be twice every other week. It might, so it is difficult to determine how often that is for someone. But if you are really paying attention to your body, maybe you notice, oh, I'm landing harder on my right foot than my left when I run. I must be compensating somewhere. Oh, I might need to implement a day of cross training, something that's not running. Or you can just do it from the beginning before you even notice something, and to help prevent that thing, So yeah, I would say it's a little more trial and error to see which modality works best for you and your cross training, when you need it, how often you need it. But especially, I would say, especially if you have a injury, or you're recovering from an injury, or you have a history of lots of injuries, then already from jump, that should be 100% part of your plan, to have 1 or 2 days of cross training of something that's not running.
Yeah. Kind of with that, maybe. So thinking of, I'm picturing more like longer term goals, longer term plans, but plateaus at some point happen.
Yes.
For almost everyone, I imagine. And I guess, like, what do we do with that? Is that when we're supposed to be maybe cycling back and doing less? Is that when we push more, or are we just like riding it out? Like, what does that look like? Because I know, like, obviously if someone's working with you, those are things that you can, figure out why that's even happening, and plan for that stuff. But if we're like kind of winging it ourselves, and also we're like, I haven't improved, you see on Facebook, someone all the time is like, I haven't improved my 5K in forever. And it's like, well, what are you doing to change that? Right. So I guess, like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that particular example is usually always because they have not implemented strength training. If they plateaued in a 5K, which is for all intents and purposes in the endurance world, that would be a short distance, or it's not a sprint, but you know what I mean, in comparison to the other endurance races, that's a faster pace. And if you haven't improved your time, and that is your goal, and you haven't improved your time in a while, I would bet money on that they have not implemented strength training, because strength training is what stimulates those muscle fibers. You can train, fast twitch muscle fibers, but you can also, even though fast twitch muscle fibers aren't the primary muscles used in endurance runs, they're both being used, the slow and the fast, but you can also train your slower twitch muscle fibers, or your, distance muscles, and condition them in strength training. You don't have to be running in order to train those muscles to help you with running. And so, especially to go faster, to stimulate muscle fibers to help you produce force into the ground, to propel you forward faster, those muscles need to be activated, engaged, stimulated, strong, and even at some point when you later in like your program, when you are more familiar, well, you've gotten some strength training under your belt, then you can get into some power work, which is what they do a lot of in CrossFit. So that if you're a person who likes CrossFit, that can be used in a very specific way during your year of training, not necessarily from January 1st to December 31st. And that's not CrossFit, that's anything. You don't want your training to look exactly the same from the first day of the year to the last day of the year. Then you definitely are not progressing in any way. You might be maintaining, because even then I would argue you're setting yourself up for burnout and setting yourself up for injury if your workouts look the exact same from beginning of the year to the end of the year. But you may be maintaining, but you're definitely not improving if they look the same. So yeah, all of that to say, that's typically what I see. Lack of strength and work implemented. What else? And usually the recovery, what are they doing for their recovery work? That oftentimes isn't paid close attention to. And so the body is just, for lack of a better phrase, holding on for dear life. So no, it's not improving in any way because you haven't allowed it to recover properly. And that's something what I mentioned earlier, as far as your body recovers, repairs, and makes gains during your rest, not during your work, not when you are working hard. It does all of that during the rest. So your rest is extremely important. And so I see that often they're just overtraining, or what I like to call under recovering.
And do you ever see, maybe none of your clients are like this, but I'm sure you've either thought about it or encountered people that have just like that mental block that's like stopping them, right? Like we talk about that, especially in the running world, but like, you know, we never thought you could go under 4 minutes for the mile, right? Then someone does it and everyone's brains are like, now everybody's doing it.
Yes.
So like, do you ever, you see that with people's training, like not in that specific of an example maybe, but just like, I can't lift this much, or I can't do this movement, or I can't squat this low. And then like, how do you, because you also like can't do it for them. So like, how do you get them through, right? Like, can you be like, yeah, well, I'm squatting this low, you can squat this low. You know, it's like, it's just not, you can't force them to do it. So how do you work with them through that?
Exactly. Oof. All of that mindset stuff. Yes, I see that often. You get in your own way. And there's a couple thoughts that came to mind as you were saying that. One, I thought of a couple former clients I used to work with where I did this. It was, I wouldn't call it this, but people would say, oh, you did a reverse psychology on them. It wasn't like a tactic I was using. It was just for real. When you use that word, first of all, it's not allowed now in my sessions when I work with people, the word can't. When you say it though, and for these two people I have in mind, I said, oh, okay, well, I guess we should move on because you just told your body you can't. So no, you won't be able to now. Like you literally are telling yourself you can't. So of course you can't. A friend of mine, or an acquaintance of mine always says anything that comes after I can't, or I is, if that makes sense. So it's like your thoughts, and then it's saying it out of your mouth is a bridge to your, what's it called? What is that word I'm looking for? Self-fulfilling prophecy is what,
Okay.
And you 100%, if you don't want to do something and are telling yourself you can't do something, then you will absolutely not do it. If you do want this, then you have to change the words you use, how you speak to yourself. And you have to, when we say believe, belief happens when you are dead set on doing something but you don't have proof of you doing it yet. So that is belief. Of course, or people will call it faith. That's where you're, in spiritual world, that's where faith comes from. You don't see physical proof of it yet. So you have to have a belief first. Otherwise, no, of course you cannot. You won't do it. So after all of that kind of talk, and these two clients, when I said, okay, well, we can move on now because you definitely can't now because you just told yourself you can't. They looked at me like, well, wait a minute. Well, what do you mean, wait a minute? You said you can't, so you can't. So let's move on. You're not going to be able to, because now it sounds different. Someone else is telling you that you're not going to be able to. And now they're in a different headspace. You can't tell me what I can't do. Well, no, I didn't. You told yourself you can't do it. I didn't. So now we're moving on. So then they didn't want to move on because I don't know, put a mirror up to them, like reflected that back to them. So that was just one. No, that won't work with everyone, of course, but that I just saw that happen in those two people. And after you kind of have that moment with yourself and get through all of that self-talk and doing the mindset work that I do, it's all about doing successful movement and then doing a little more and then doing a little more. And for some people, they can't stand that. It's like these incremental progressions. They just want to do the thing already. But if you want to be successful at doing it, then that is how you progress towards it. So let's say, I think you used an example of squat that low. So it's range of motion. So we go to where you can, but I, as your coach or as the outside eyes looking, I can tell why you're not able to go as low right now. So that's what we also work on, whether that's hip mobility or ankle mobility. So I'm putting that into your program. So I'm giving you the things you need while we're doing other things. Then we come back to it. And before you know it, you're going lower without even putting forth the big effort to do it, because we've worked on those limiting factors. And when you work on limiting factors, you're doing it again in a way that's not high intensity, that's not putting you at risk. So I'm not they're not squatting and I'm like pushing their shoulders down to go lower. No, we're working on mobility in a less risky way. So they're not getting hurt and then coming back to the main movement that we are looking to improve, if that makes sense. So all of that was one thought that I had. But the other thought that came up when you mentioned that mental blocks, was always, I'll never forget when I first learned about mental blocks. When I lived in New York and I was running with this Olympic development track club. And one of my teammates, extremely talented sprinter, and she was a heptathlete. So she did, 7 events? 6 events. I forget,
I was about to correct you. I'm like, I actually don't know. What am I going to guess for?
Wait, heptathlon is 10 and the women are 7. I think it's 7. Anyway.
Yeah.
And she, in practice, would be doing great. Like whatever our workout was for that particular practice, her times were great, or her jumps were great, or her whatever. And then oftentimes in competition, she would be doing things like, what is she doing? Like total opposite of what she was doing in practice or how she was performing in practice. And one day coach says to her, "Oh, I figured it out. You're afraid of success." And I heard him say that. And I was like, wait, what is he talking about? Everyone on this team, our goal was to be Olympians, to be in the Olympics. So why would we be afraid of success? That's what we want to succeed. That is our success. That's what she's training for. And I saw her face also like, what are you talking about? He said, you're afraid of success. You've done all the things that you need to do to get to where you want to go. But for some reason, when you get here in competition, when it counts to get you to the next level, you sabotage yourself and do something way out of nothing that we've been working on, nothing that he coached her to do. And she would do these little things that would sabotage herself. So all of that to say, we learned or realized for her, being afraid of success is because of expectation. So if I pass this level, if I reach this milestone, then not only do I have higher expectations for myself, others probably have higher expectations of me as well. And I don't know if I can handle that, or I don't know if I want that, or whatever the reason might be. But you can do this, but you keep doing something that you shouldn't be doing, or that's not conducive to the goal, that sabotages your success, so that you can still play small. So you can be right here where it's comfortable. All about comfort. And that's where, long story to say, to answer your question about blocks, mental blocks. That's just one example. There's many types of mental blocks, but yeah, those were the ones that came to mind. And those are we would call unsexy parts of your training, where you're not like sweating buckets and I'm running 10 miles, or I'm doing hill repeats, or I'm doing sprints, or these aren't the sexy, but I'm working on my mindset, or I'm doing meditation, or I'm doing visualization, or I'm all of that stuff. And I always forget his name, but there's a sociologist or psychologist, sports psychologist, back in the day who coined the phrase, the mundanity of excellence. Those things that we have to repeatedly do over and over again, but they're boring, they're monotonous, they're unsexy, but those are the things that will separate you from good to great, are things like mindset work, working on your mental blocks, because we can't see you doing that. We can't, there's nothing like, ooh, wow, about that. But those are the types of things you have to do to get through those mental blocks. And it takes time and commitment. And help sometimes.
I was gonna say a lot of help, probably, like talking someone through it, making suggestions, seeing things that you're not seeing, right?
Yes.
That definitely is helpful. Okay, somehow time has just been passing. Who knew?
Oh my gosh.
Right? But all right, last question. Do you have a favorite strength exercise or activity that you're doing right now? Just because I'm curious. I'm always curious what other people are doing.
Yes.
I'm nosy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, in general, it's not even whether it's right now or anytime. My favorite exercise, my favorite movement is pull-ups. That's my personal favorite.
What?
Yes. That's one of those things that many clients actually, even whether they're runners or not, will always ask, why am I doing this? Like, that's not my goal, but that's always my secret goal, to get every person I work with to be able to do a pull-up. The reason being, and it's not necessarily physical, that everyone knows that's a hard movement. It's a challenging, regardless of who you are, male, female, bodybuilder, ballet dancer, doesn't matter what you do, pull-ups are challenging. To pull your entire body weight up with your arms, chin over a bar, right? So when the way I see people, again, shift in their, like, how they carry themselves and in their confidence when they have accomplished doing a pull-up, is night and day. And that is why I want people to be able to do a pull-up. You to know that you can do that. First of all, wait, I did what? You're on another level now, as far as your knowing what you're capable of, or maybe not knowing now. I have no idea what I'm capable of because I didn't think I could do a pull-up, and now I can do a pull-up. Like, what is out there now for me, right? That's how some people feel about doing an Ironman or an ultra marathon, or I forget the name of, we just watched a documentary about the infamous, 7 days marathon in the desert, in the Sahara Desert. Like, that's wild. So things like that, how people test their fortitude and their will and all of that. But pull-ups, I've noticed, like, as far as a strength work type of thing, is that thing where people are a different person if they couldn't do it before, and then they get to a point where they can, night and day. But right now, so I love kettlebells as well. So that's something that's in my current program, that they're very versatile, and you can use them to tap into many different energy systems in the body. So you can use them for endurance, you can use them for power, you can use them for strength, you can use them for stability work, mobility work. So kettlebell work is my go-to right now.
Yes. Well, I mean, you saw my face when you said pull-ups, and I feel like I kind of went through the whole evolution of your explanation, though, as I'm thinking about it, right? Like, oh my gosh, you really said pull-ups. Like, who likes pull-ups? I hate pull-ups, right? But then as you're explaining it, I'm like, I can remember where I was when I first, as an adult, was able to do pull-ups again. I have that thought of, like, okay, that was a goal. Like, you go to CrossFit and you're like, you want to be able to do pull-ups because, I got to do the band. Like, that's just so annoying, right? So it's like, I need to be able to do pull-ups. I would go to the park by my house, not my house now, but my house at the time. And they had a pull-up bar that was, like, on the path. I'd run through the path, start doing pull-up, jumping pull-ups, and, like, the whole eccentric movement and all that stuff. And one day I could do pull-ups, and I just remember I was at that park, I could do pull-ups. So I went to class the next day and was like, I don't need this band, so it's like, I love that. As much as I'm like, I hate pull-ups, like, I'm with you, right? Like, being able to do a pull-up is it feels different. Like you're like, I am a powerful person now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I do love that you said that, because it also just reminded me, I gotta go see if I can do pull-ups now.
Yeah.
I haven't tried to do a pull-up in like a year and a half or something. So
So good.
probably like
And
2 years. Who knows?
oh wow. And everything how you just went through the progress, those different steps, the different levels of how you progress your pull-ups. Exactly. So whether it's the band, even if you're starting off, how I start off with most people, a flexed arm hang, where you just holding your chin above the bar and just see how long you can hold it. Then when you've gotten that, kind of secure, like you feel good about holding yourself, then you can go, like you said, the eccentric, hold for a second and then slowly pull down. Step your way back up to hold, then slowly on the way down. So that's your eccentric training, which, by the way, going back to something you mentioned earlier about soreness, eccentric training actually makes you more sore than regular type of training. How the muscle fibers are contracting while they are lengthening actually makes you a little more sore. Just a little
Wow.
fun fact.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a fun fact, but fun fact.
We'll say it's a fun fact for today. Okay, Coach T, do you have anything that I'm sure there's things we didn't get to talk about, but anything, and then where can people find you in case they don't know from last time?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's so much.
I know.
I want to leave by saying, I mean, if you are someone who has not implemented strength training or, put that into your training regimen for whatever reason, but it's important, or you've heard how we've talked about how it's important, I just make sure you're not doing too much too soon. Just like with your running, not too much too soon. Same with strength training. And by too much too soon, that could be too much volume, like too many reps. That could be too many times in the week, too much weight. You can start with your body weight. Actually, some movements, like we were just talking about, pull up, is hard enough with just your body weight. So you don't have to add extra weight. So just, take it one step at a time and only change one variable at a time. I would say out of anything you could think about with strength training, I would say that, remember that. So if you start 2 times this week with a full body routine, next week, do not add more weight and add more reps and deepen your range of motion and go at a faster pace. Only change one of those variables at a time. So this week, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to do a little more weight. Great. So you're going to stay at the exact same reps that you did last week, the same range of motion that you did last week. Everything is the same, but you're simply going up a little bit of weight. Great. Or keep the weight the same and say, okay, today instead of 12 reps, I'm going to go for 15 reps. That's the variable. So just change one variable at a time.
Yes, I think that's great advice. Sorry, I cut you off, but I feel like that's important for all of us to know that.
Yes. No, I was going to say where to find me. So on Instagram, I am Tilita, IAMTILITA. And then I have my text tribe, if you want to join me on text, I send out to my text tribe a daily high performance affirmation. And so it's just a little quick note to your phone. It's not like a full paragraph of things, but one high performance affirmation to start your day off. So yeah, you can join that. I don't know if I can give you the number now and you can include it on the show notes, but if you text the word mindset to the number 855-960-6492, then you'll be added to that list.
Well, we're about to be text tribe friends. I know it's not real text friends, but I'm going to pretend. But if you respond to it, it does. I get the notification, so I can text back. Yes. You're going to regret saying that. Not just to me. It's going to be annoying. No, other people are going to be like, I'm going to talk to Selena. Do not text her everybody that much. Just
Right.
text what she said.
Right. But yeah, it's cool. I like the little reminders, or just to set, because as we've talked about, the mindset is important. We talked about that in addition to the strength training work today. So it's just a little, and some people you've heard of affirmations, you have that affirmation practice, like I am strong, I am this, but these are high performance affirmations. So I just created some things that you might not have thought about, of really telling yourself, oh yeah, I am that, I own that, so yeah, it's cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of that info about strength training, because I feel like, especially as runners, we always need extra help. And thank you for taking the time.
Oh, definitely. I would come back once a month if you want, but I love these conversations. And yes, if anyone, I think you, well, I don't know, your run club works with only kids, or mixed, but training for specific races. But yeah, if anyone wants to implement strength training to help you prepare for a race, yes, I am here for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Tori.
I just want to thank Tilita again for being our second time returning guest. So great talking with her. Always love the energy, always love the content. She's super knowledgeable about everything we talked about, so it's really fun getting to pick her brain. I feel like we could have talked a whole lot longer, but again, I can only make people listen to us for so long, right? But make sure you check out all of her links. She also gave us the Texting with Tilita code as well, so check all that out in the show notes, because I definitely want to hear more from her inspiration-wise, but also just about fitness and planning. So check that out. Also, just a reminder, I am finally doing virtual one-on-one running coaching. So it's not just for youth in my area. It is now for anyone, anywhere. So that's super exciting. I am looking forward to being able to write plans for people who are either new runners, or mostly focusing on new and intermediate runners, people who either just really don't know how to get started, how to make a plan that's going to help them feel empowered, feel motivated, and want to keep doing what they're doing, but don't really know where to start, or people who are started, have been running, want to see some improvements, have a goal they're working towards, and really just need some help executing that. So that's really what I'm focusing on now. Anyone who knows me obviously knows I can get competitive and obviously like to work with competitive people, but at the moment that is just not where I'm at in my running. So I'm also trying to focus on the people who are kind of in a similar place as me. So make sure you check that out. For the listeners, I do have different discount codes, so make sure you check that out in the notes as well. Depending on when you sign up, there are different ones in there. So check it out.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at maracayrunclub@gmail.com.